1,570. That is the amount of people that were arrested on or due to the events of today, 4 years ago, aka January 6, 2021. Some people call it Treason Day. Some people call it Insurrection Day. Some people call it a Day of Love. And out of that 1,570 people, 1 in 5 had connections to the military, meaning that they were either active duty service members, reservists, National Guardsmen, or, retirees or veterans, just in general. But 1 in 5, let that sink in. 1 in 5 people that were involved in storming the Capitol 4 years ago were service members. Now, I know that this is a hot topic, whatever, but I don't like to shy away from hot topics. I don't like to run away from hard things. That's something that my parents and the military have instilled in me, is to push into discomfort. And sports taught me that as well, especially weightlifting, but pushing into the discomfort, not necessarily enjoying it in a masochistic way, but enjoying that pain, right? And that's why I'm here today, because it doesn't make me happy to talk about this. It doesn't make me feel good to talk about this. And it makes me angry. It makes me angry quite a bit. And I say that as a person who works in the intel and security sector, right? It is my job to educate people for insider threats, right? So that is what I do. It is my job to educate people on spotting and identifying an insider threat. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't call this out, right? Now, again, I get that there are people out there that say that the events that took place on January 6th were nothing wrong. It was people exercising their First Amendment rights. It was a day of love. I'm just going to keep saying that. It was a day of love. And couldn't be any further from the truth. Seriously, it really couldn't be any further from the truth. The thing is that can you protest peacefully? Yes, you can. As a matter of fact, from about 2014 to 20, it's protests still go on, but if you get where I'm going from, around the events of 2014, 2012, maybe 2012, we'll go with 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, in 2020. There were a lot of protests revolving around a lot of social, I'm buying airfield, by the way, around a lot of social issues that were going on, and for the most part, 98% of those protests were peaceful. Now, there are people out there who don't like those protests, and I don't care. I really don't. Say what you want about them, have your feelings about them, whatever. January 6th could have been one of those protests. I mean, there were groups, right, that if I were in government, I am in government, but if I were like in a position of power in government, I would have them deemed as terrorist organizations, homegrown, Organizations like the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, or whatever they are, I would have them designated as terrorist organizations because of the rhetoric that they spew and the incites of violence that take place around their rallies, and the threat that they pose to the American citizen. Now, I'm not a person in power and I cannot designate terrorist organizations, but if I could, I would. And those are some of them, right? But you have seen, right? Because I'm not going to put my bias to affect you. But you have seen they have had protests in the past and they have been peaceful, right? The rhetoric that they spew is not necessarily one that is of peace and harmony. They're violent. It's a violent, hate, extremist rhetoric. However, you can have protests and your ideology be that of, conservative ideals, or right-winged ideals, right? And that's okay. Shoot, even the KKK has had protests peacefully, and nobody's been arrested. Do I agree with that? No, obviously. I'm a black man in America. I do not agree with the KKK whatsoever. However, I will say that if they are allowed to exercise their First Amendment rights, and they have done so in the past in a peaceful manner. Don't agree with their organization whatsoever. However, the events that took place on January 6th started off as a rally, as we all know, right? And don't let the media, remember, I just talked about this the other day, do not let the media or certain medias try to tell you otherwise. It did start off as a rally, and then it quickly ended as a rally and turned into a riot. Now, what do I mean by all of this? Well, when your intent was always to storm the Capitol, when you bring a guillotine to execute members of Congress, when you are chanting, hang the VP at the time, Mike Pence, I don't care what political party you are on the wrong side. It does not matter. That is not a day of love. That is an insurrection. Your intent is to overthrow the government, to stop them from certifying an election. That was the intent of that day. That is what the people went there for. Was every single person involved in January 6th a part of that? I don't think so. Were there people who showed up to the rally and then probably left? Yes. Are those people bad people? No. But I will say this. If you showed up to that rally with the intent to storm the Capitol and stop that certifying of the election, yeah, you deserve to be in jail. You're an insurrectionist. Like, I literally give briefs to soldiers all the time about spotting insider threats. And one of the definitions of an insider threat is an insurrectionist. Somebody who's trying to subvert the government, to overthrow the government, right? So when I talk to you about these things, it's from my expert view, right? I have a master's degree in Intel studies with a focus on collection management or Intel management. And, I am a badged and credentialed, counter Intel person, right? This is my resume. I've spent years studying counterterrorism, insider threats, right? So when I'm talking to you about this, it's because this is my job, right? And I've gotten an advanced degree in this field for this reason. I have a graduate degree in counterintelligence, so I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. And in the past, I have gotten into it with one of my section chiefs that I work with because he disagreed. He didn't think that there's an extremist problem in the military, and I have to disagree with that. If there's not an extremist problem in the military, why do we have a job? Because that is literally our job in the military, is to stop insider threats and to counter national security crimes and to stop espionage from foreign threats, right? Foreign entities. But another part of our job is to stop counterterrorism, or not to stop counterterrorism, but to counter terrorism, right? To stop terrorist threats. Extremists are terrorists, plain and simple. And the truth of the matter is that even if you don't agree with what I have to say, that doesn't stop the truth. He believed that there aren't right-winged extremists in our military, yet when you look at the data, right, or the data, however you want to say it, that couldn't be further from the truth. That it really could not be further from the truth. 1 in 5 from January 6 alone. 1 in 5 were arrested and had ties to the military, meaning that they were veterans or retirees, active duty, reservist, guard, didn't matter, right? 1 in 5. That's just January 6th. Then, during the last administration, because the current administration is not out of office yet, so during the last administration, what do you see? You see an uptick in right-winged attacks, right-winged violent protests, an uptick, right? So much so that the FBI in their counterterrorism unit was even pushing to have organizations designated as terrorist organizations because they are a threat to American society and American way of life. Again, if this offends you because your ideology is conservative or right-winged, I'm sorry, but I do not care. Address that with your own party members. This is not a political post. This is not a political statement whatsoever, right? This is a statement or a post of security for our nation. Now, are there left-winged extremists? Sure, fine, whatever. You can say Antifa is a left-wing extremist organization, and I would be inclined to agree with you. However, I don't really see them out there storming the Capitol. I know there are people out there that said that they were a part of it. I know that there are people out there who say that it was an inside job from the government, and so far the only inside thing or entity from the government were Capitol Police and other agencies people who work for other agencies informing the likes of the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and what have you, about the monitoring of this event. How do I know this? Because a guy was just arrested, or not arrested, but found guilty of it, right? An officer was just found guilty of it. So it's not a political thing, right? It's an ideological thing. Terrorism is ideological. And on the events that happened that day, I would chalk that up to, again, insurrection for sure. But the fact that there were federal officers who were injured and as a result died, like what would happen if a normal civilian took the life of a federal officer for whatever reason, or even just a police officer? What happens to that person? Let me ask you that, right? So why are we treating these people any different? Just because it has become a political thing, right? It turned into a political circus because of certain individual. That's not right, people. Like, let's just call it for what it is. And I know that those people in jail are hoping that the incoming administration upholds their promise, one of the many promises that they've made, to pardon them because it was a day of love. But I'm sorry, it wasn't a day of love. And just because they got their way now, I would hope that those sentences are upheld, because protesting peacefully is one thing, and that is perfectly fine, that is perfectly acceptable. And even if I don't agree with your ideology, I will defend that 100% every single day. But when you storm the Capitol, you break down doors, you steal government property, because that's what happened. We all saw those pictures. You beat police officers that are federal officers. That is not love. That is not peaceful. And that is un-American. So for the people that say that these people were patriots and Americans, they're wrong. That is not American. You should probably reevaluate what you believe in and what you think, because that's wrong. And to the people that will say that they are patriots, again, you're wrong. And to the people that say that it was peaceful, it wasn't peaceful. And it wasn't an inside job by the government. It wasn't an inside job by the left. It was an insurrection posed to us from a political point of view by extremists who hold conservative ideals. And that's not to say that all conservatives hold these ideals. There are a lot of conservatives that don't. And if you haven't seen it or heard it yet, but Representative Adam Kinzinger actually wrote a thing on it, and I will link it in the description below. But he's a Republican, he's a conservative, he's an Air Force veteran, and he was disgusted by this. A lot of conservatives were disgusted by this. I'm pretty sure Mike Pence was disgusted by this. As a matter of fact, Mitch McConnell was disgusted by this. A lot of conservatives were disgusted enough that they were actually going to hold another impeachment for the former, now incoming president, because of this, because they say that he incited this. Now, I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into who incited this, but I will say that the organizations that I've listed, they had already planned this, and their intent was to do this. So even if everybody else had left, those organizations, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, their intent was always to go and do this. So why aren't they branded as a terrorist organization? I would brand them as that. Simply put, if at the end of the day, out of the 1,570 people who have been arrested and charged, right, don't get free, I'll be happy, because they deserve it. But if they were to let everybody out except the people who are members of those organizations, I'll still be happy, because those organizations should be branded as terrorist organizations. And that's just the truth, plain and simple, right? Because they had intent for a long time. They had planned it for a long time. And out of the 1 in 5 service members, or the 1 in 5 people who were service members who have been arrested over this, I hope they strip everything away from you, because you don't have the right to call yourself a veteran. You just don't. You're an insurrectionist, plain and simple. You have violated your oath to this country and to the American citizens who you work for. So if you were a veteran and you took part of that, shame on you. And I know that General Mattis said that this does not represent the DOD, but when the majority of the people, statistically speaking, are being arrested in this event, and they are predominantly veterans and current military serving members, that's a problem. I don't think it represents the DOD as well, but that is a problem. We need to do better. So on that, I'm signing off. Let's not storm more capitals. It's un-American. That's not what we do. All right? Bye.